Hey guys, Jim here again to bring you guys another fight prediction video. In today's fight prediction video, I cover the UFC 156 Super Bowl weekend light heavyweight title eliminator that features the former Pride 2 Division and Strikeforce light heavyweight champion Dan Henderson when he faces the former UFC light heavyweight champion Lyoto Machida. And today's fight prediction, I'm going to do something a little different. Besides the backstory, I'm going to do a fight breakdown and fight prediction combo. So you're going to still get the backstory of how this fight came together, but the fight breakdown and prediction will be combined in one shot of how I see the fight going and who I have winning. So without further ado, let's get this started. Now, the backstory for Dan Henderson versus Lyoto Machida goes like this. Dan Henderson and Lyoto Machida were both scheduled to face Jon Jones at some time in 2012. In Dan Henderson's case, he had to pull out of his UFC 151 title fight against Jon Jones due to a right knee injury that led to Machida getting the next shot at Jones, citing Jon did not want to face Chael Sonnen on 8 days' notice. So for that reason, Machida was given the opportunity by the boss to face him at UFC 152, but Lyoto declined to face Jon because he felt it wasn't enough time to properly prepare to face Jon. The time frame would have been 4 weeks. And I can understand how that's a little bit, from his perspective, unfair for such an important fight because he just lost the fight against Jon. He just had a rough training camp. But this is the UFC. When they call you to take a fight, you either seize the opportunity or you gotta wait for the opportunity in limbo or fight somebody else and lose that fight. Because look what happened to Rashad. He decided that he was gonna wait for Shogun, and shoot, it took him almost a year to get another title shot. So the opportunity for a fighter to make money and become famous is very small. It's a real small time clock. So when they give you an opportunity, you have to seize it. But moving on, Dana White said that Lyoto would be facing Dan Henderson next. But this fight itself was basically in the works because it was never really confirmed when it was going to happen because Dan Henderson was still rehabbing his knee, so it wasn't quite clear when it was going to happen. At first I thought it was going to be at the end of the year card at UFC 155, but that wasn't to be. But instead, Dan Henderson confirmed this week that he would be facing Lyoto Machida at UFC 156 and Super Bowl weekend. Coming into this fight, Dan is coming off of 4 stunning victories. 3 knockouts victories over Babalu Sobral in the first round. A 3rd round stoppage of Strikeforce light heavyweight champion Chael to capture the Strikeforce light heavyweight championship. And the most important victory, in my opinion, in his career, when he knocked out Fedor Emelianenko. There's only 3 guys in the world that can say they defeated Fedor Emelianenko legitimately. And that is Fabricio Werdum, Antonio Silva, and Dan Henderson. The other guy who beat Fedor, that doesn't really count. I mean, I don't care, that was a cut. It didn't count. But Dan can say he's the first guy to ever knock out Fedor cold with punches. So, with that said, he had the fight of the year in 2011 against Mauricio Shogun Rua in a back and forth war where he did enough in the judge's eyes to get the unanimous decision and was onward to face Jon Jones. But as you know, that fight didn't come to fruition. And for Lyoto Machida, for his part, in his last 3, he's defeated Randy Couture by a crane kick. He lost to Jon Jones in style with a guillotine choke, standing up, and he's coming off his second round destruction on Fox against Ryan Bader by knockout. For Dan Henderson, he's looking to dispatch of this young light heavyweight phenom and Lyoto Machida to get his last opportunity to get UFC gold. For Lyoto, he wants to defeat Henderson so he can get his rematch and reclaim the light heavyweight championship of the world by facing the winner of Jon Jones and Chael Sonnen. But getting a legend like Dan Henderson under your belt doesn't hurt because he's already got Tito and Randy under his belt. Why not add another one, right? So it's basically both men have their reasons for getting the next crack at the light heavyweight championship of the world, but only one man can come out of the cage, the winner, and clear-cut #1 contender. Now, with that being said, this concludes the backstory for this fight. So let's move on to the official breakdown and prediction. Now, Dan Henderson, coming into this fight, brings his great wrestling, because he's an Olympic caliber wrestler, great submission defense, because it's really hard to submit this dude unless you're an Nogueira brother, Anderson Silva. Paul Harris tried, he failed. And his trademark right hand, dubbed by Mauro Ranallo the H-bomb. So, you gotta be wary of that thing because it's sent Fedor Emelianenko and Bob Sobra in the first round to the ground viciously. Not to mention Vanderlei Silva and Rafael Feijóo. That's just naming a few of Dan Henderson's victims. Now, for Lyoto Machida, he brings an unorthodox striking style into this fight with his Shotokan karate, which he has a black belt under his father, and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Not to mention, this guy is hard to hit, hard to take down. He's just a tricky fighter all around. But as far as weakness is concerned with these two fighters, for Dan Henderson, it's his cardio, definitely, and somebody who can get in and out on him and defend his takedowns. That'll be key to beating him. It's basically getting in and out and defending his takedowns. And of course, his cardio, like I said earlier, because he gassed in the Jake Shields fight and he gassed in the Shogun fight. And for Lyoto, it's basically guarding, because if you look at it, he doesn't really guard in a traditional sense, because you know when you guard, you're like this, right? Or like this, but he's more or less like this. Or like this. So it's basically, when you guard like that and they get your timing right, you go to the canvas. Because look what Shogun did to him. He got his timing right and knocked him out. And my game plan for Dan Henderson would basically be, don't get frustrated like Ryan Bader did, do something foolish and get knocked out. But at the same time, be smart and be controlled. Because you need controlled aggression to beat Lyoto. You have to be aggressive, yes, but don't be stupid about it. Because he's waiting for his opportunity to sprint in, and boom. So, you gotta be careful. Not to mention, get his timing right, just right. You have to pressure him against the cage, clinch him, get his timing just right to get that H-bomb in. Because personally, I do not see Dan Henderson, by no means necessary, getting a unanimous decision over Lyoto Machida. Ain't gonna happen. But for Lyoto Machida, he's got to be a bullfighter against Dan Henderson. He's got to evade Dan's strikes, because when Dan hits you, he hits hard, real hard. He's got to basically frustrate him, take him down, because although Dan is an Olympic caliber wrestler, he's been taken down by guys that are not on his level wrestling-wise as of late, because he's got great MMA wrestling, but his MMA wrestling defense isn't all that great, because Shogun took him down, Rampage took him down, so there you go. Lyoto will definitely get this man to the ground with his trips and everything. So take him down, try to secure a submission, but if that's not necessary, you have to stay on the feet, basically evade his strikes, get in and out, you know, the sniper. Just boom, get out. Kick, boom, get out. And when the opportunity presents itself, go in for a flurry. Because that's what you gotta do. You have to put the pressure on Dan. I don't see Lyoto knocking Dan out, by no means necessary, because Dan's chin is phenomenal. Nobody has knocked out Dan Henderson in his entire career. So will Lyoto knock him out? No. Lyoto can win this fight, in my opinion, by submission or by decision, but not by knockout. So, the way I see the fight going is like this. I see Dan Henderson being aggressive, but not dumb like Ryan Bader. I see Lyoto evading strikes, being pushed against the cage, being bullied by Dan a little bit, then getting out, basically clinching him a bit, and bullfighting him. And I also see him frustrating Henderson a bit too. And I think eventually he's going to get him to the ground and submit him. Because there is no way, shape, or form that Dan Henderson is getting knocked out as of late, because nobody's been able to do it, and I don't think Lyoto's going to be able to do it. Anderson Silva did knock him out. Quentin Rampage Jackson could not knock out Dan Henderson. Vanderlei Silva could not knock out Dan Henderson. Lyoto Machida will not knock out Dan Henderson. He will defeat Dan Henderson, because my official prediction is that Lyoto Machida defeats Dan Henderson by a second round submission. Now, this concludes today's fight prediction. And my final thoughts are this. Lyoto, if you're pissed Chael got the shot, next time they offer you a fight, homie, do not turn it down. Even if it's on a 4 weeks notice, don't turn it down. Because they like guys who step up. And Dan quit bitching about, you know, how it's sacrilege and all this mess. Because you should have told them ahead of time that you were injured. And maybe when you healed up, you would be fighting John Super Bowl weekend instead of Lyoto. So you guys gotta take responsibility for your own mistakes here. But that being said, UFC 156 is gonna be an awesome card with Frankie Edgar and Jose Aldo and Rashad Evans and Nogueira. Another light heavyweight clash. But the Dan Henderson Lyoto Machida fight will be the more interesting fight of the night because it's going to be cool to see whether Dan can hit the H-bomb on Lyoto or Lyoto can submit him. I mean, I'd like Dan to knock him out, but I don't see it happening. I see Lyoto beating him and facing John Jones next. If you like this video, guys, give me a thumbs up in the appropriate place. And I'll be back with more cool videos for you guys really soon. Jimmy signing off. See ya.